Hello, everyone, and welcome to OHSCA Interviews. I'm Master Barlodge, and I'm your host for today's episode. Today, I'm happy to have with me the Member of Parliament for Battle River Crowfoot and the Vice Chair to the Standing Committee on the Environment and Sustainable Development, Damien Kurek. Thank you so much for joining us, Damien. Great to have you back on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Vasu, and it's great to be here with you. I'm really looking forward to being able to chat with you today.
Yeah, for sure. So for our new viewers, I just want to make a quick note that you joined us almost at the exact same time last year, just about a week forward. So you joined us on the exact same show on June 13th. So it's great to have you back on nearly a year later. There's been many developments in the Conservative Party, in the Conservative movement. Last year, we were in the midst of a very good leadership race to unite the party, and now we're united under the front of Pierre Poilievre, and we have a growing, strong Conservative movement, and very happy to have you on and ask a couple of questions today.
Well, it sounds great. Thanks very much, and you're absolutely right. It's an exciting time to be a Conservative. We have a united party, a strong leader, and we are. You can really see that across the country, folks are increasingly looking for better, and certainly that's the message that I'm hearing. I know that is the message that Pierre is hearing, and so many other Conservative MPs and activist campaigners across the country. So it's a good time to be a Conservative, and it's an important time to be a Conservative because our country needs that common sense Conservative vision to get our nation back on track.
For sure. So I want to start off the interview by just asking, how did you get started into politics?
Yeah, great question. And the answer is really, really simple, and it's that I was passionate about it. So there's a kind of a pathway that one can take. I certainly look back and I see a combination of hard work and providence that led me to the point where I have the honor of representing the people of Battle River Crowfoot, which is also my home region, an area where my family has been for multiple generations. But really, when it comes down to it, I look back, and when I was a young person, a kid, I was always passionate about politics and the idea of what government and the power structures of our society and how that works, how it could be used for good and it could be used for ill. And it was actually when I was 15 years old, I had the opportunity to come to Ottawa on a youth exchange. It was a 1-week youth exchange. My family didn't have very much money, so a local Lions club actually sponsored my plane ticket to be able to come to Ottawa. I was pretty interested in politics, so I actually called the Prime Minister's office and booked a meeting. And it was newly elected Prime Minister Stephen Harper. This was back in, I think it was 2007, and had the opportunity to, and much to my surprise and my parents' surprise, his office called back and said, yes, we will coordinate a meeting when I was in Ottawa a couple of months later. And I had that opportunity to connect with the Prime Minister, as well as he had invited my local Member of Parliament, who ended up being my predecessor. So I started showing up, and that's really what it comes down to. Sometimes I was the youngest person in the room by a factor of 4, but I still kept showing up, kept getting involved, continued to work for that common sense Conservative ideals that I thought was really the solutions that our country needed. And then after high school, did a number of things, but ultimately went and studied politics, was able to do an internship in a minister's office in 2015, and then became a provincial political staffer and then a constituency staffer for a Conservative MP. And then when in 2019, the opportunity came up to run in a nomination, I got to work and was able to sell quite a few memberships and get connected in the area that I had grown up in, was passionate about, talked about the issues that I've been passionate about, rural issues, good governance issues, making sure that, again, that common sense Conservative vision was kind of a priority, and was able to be successful in that nomination. And now 2 elections later, I'm still here trying to be that strong voice in rural East Central Alberta as part of Pierre Poilievre's Conservative team. A little bit of a note about anybody who's listening to this podcast that might be interested in politics. There's best practices. There's things that you can do that others have done that are successful. But let me definitively say there are 338 different paths to Parliament. So for you, Vasu, or any of your listeners, there's no one set perfect way that you can get elected or get involved in politics. It's an individual journey. And for myself and my family, because it certainly is a family endeavor. I'm married to an amazing woman. Her name is Danielle, and I have three children. This is a journey that we're on, and an incredible one at that. And so a little bit longer of an explanation maybe than you were hoping for. But that's my encouragement is chart that path forward. If you're passionate about it, be passionate. Figure out what works for the area that you're from, the issues that are important to you, and show up. Because when you show up, you'll be amazed at the decisions and how you can be a part of things. There's no one.
For sure. I mean, I hope I can pick up the phone in 2025 and say, hey, can I book a meeting with Pierre, the next Prime Minister of Canada? But it's great to hear that you got started at a pretty young age, and to see where you are now, it's great to see. So we're going to hop into our question and answer segment now. And these questions are asked by members of our high school team. So the first one comes from Tippy Talk all the way from Windsor West. And he wants to ask you, Premier Smith, a newly re-elected the Alberta Premier. We want to first congratulate her on that as well. But Premier Smith has set up a new committee to investigate Alberta's COVID-19 responses. Do you support the idea of following suit by instead launching a full national inquiry under the Pierre Poilievre-led government?
Yeah, good question. I know there's a lot of questions surrounding COVID response and what do we do now that we're looking at it in the rearview mirror. How can we make sure that there was accountability for every decision that was made? And like you, I congratulate Danielle Smith and the Alberta United Conservative Party on a resounding election win. And I think what at the very root of it, because I'm not sure exactly what the answer should be. There's a lot of things that could be done, whether it's an investigation or an inquiry or a committee. But ultimately, I think what needs to be recognized is that over the course of those 2 or 3 years of COVID, we saw a massive erosion of trust in our institutions. We saw that there were issues, a whole host of issues that were politicized by certain actors for their political gain. Take Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, for example. He promised to not call an election, promised to not impose a vaccine mandate. And no matter where you stand on those issues, he promised something in June. And then in July and August, he called an election and imposed a vaccine mandate. That forced and anybody who disagreed with him, he resorted to name calling. And ultimately, in many cases, decided that in order to accomplish his political objective, he would take away their freedoms to even have a different opinion. And so regardless of where one sits on any of these issues, whether it be COVID, whether it be vaccines, whether it be a host of other issues, we see increasingly that the Trudeau Liberals and the NDP as their coalition partners, but this is a trend that is not unique to them, but I think left-leaning movements globally, this is something that increasingly happens, is that anyone who doesn't fall within a very narrow understanding of what the leaders of a particular movement say is correct, they're ostracized, they're stigmatized, and if they don't come along and get along, then they're cast out or called names or whatever the case is. But the result of what happens when that is the case is that you have an erosion of trust in the foundations of what our institutions are supposed to be. Parliament, for example, it is supposed to be a place where different ideas, different opinions come and can have free and open dialogue. Increasingly, we're seeing that there is criticism when you have that free and open dialogue. If you don't agree with the Prime Minister, then you're an obstructionist or you're a racist or whatever the flavor accusation of the day is. What's important is to have that dialogue, have the ability to have those tough conversations, and understand that not everybody in our country agrees. It frustrates me to no end when a Liberal will stand up in Parliament and say, everybody disagrees with you. I'll say, well, no, I know full well and understand entirely that there is disagreement on virtually every issue. So to be able to have that debate and dialogue, and specifically when it comes to COVID and an understanding, we need to ensure that we do the hard work that is required to restore trust in our institutions. So whether that's related to spending, whether that's on COVID policy and otherwise, we need to ensure that we do the hard work, roll up our sleeves, so to speak, and do the hard work to ensure that Canadians can once again look at their government, whether they agree with what the government that is in charge, whether they voted for them or not, but to ensure that they can be trusted, can steward the institutions of our nation well. And I think that's where that erosion is really, really concerning. On top of a whole bunch of other political concerns and whatnot, we have to ensure that we rebuild the trust that's been lost.
100%. I mean, it goes back to the very principle that this country was founded on, freedom, right? And if there's not a freedom of thought, freedom of expression that we as individuals can have, that's different from the government, then how can we call ourselves a democracy? How can we call ourselves a free country? And it's been becoming clear that in the past 8 years under this Trudeau government, our freedoms are becoming limited, whether it's with things like freedom of speech or lawfully abiding gun owners, or a number of variety of different issues. Freedom is becoming limited under this Trudeau government, and it stops in 2025 when a pure majority comes in. And with that, I want to move on to the next question. So I say at the start of the interview, you are the Vice Chair of the Standing Committee on the Environment and Sustainable Development. Based on your understanding of Canada's clean technologies, how do you think this Canadian government should approach reducing emissions without making life more unaffordable for Canadians?
Great question. And I think that what is really unfortunate is that the Liberal government does not have an environmental plan; they have a tax plan. And over 8 years, we have seen how that has been an abject failure. In fact, the only even resemblance of success that they can point to is that emissions went down during the COVID lockdowns. That's the only time that the Liberals can say that their plan worked, was not because of the implementation of carbon tax, not because of anything else that they've done, but because the whole world was locked down. So they point to that and say, "Hey, our plan works," and then accuse us of not wanting to protect the environment. Vasu, look, I'm the fifth generation to help farm on my family farm, and I know full well how important stewardship of the land and a clean and healthy environment is for not just today, but for our future and future generations. And being a farmer, if we didn't take care of the land that we're planting this year, then we won't have land to plant in next year or future years. And I find it really unfortunate that the Liberals seem to be more interested in gimmicks and ideology than actual practical solutions. So you mentioned in your question how there are technological solutions, incredible technological solutions that are in many cases being thought up, and problems that are being solved by amazing Canadians right here in our country, across in Ontario and Alberta, across our country. We are figuring out how to solve the challenges that are faced before us. So instead of punishing people for living their lives, instead of punishing young people for living in a big country, or heating their apartment because it's cold, or their parents for being able to take kids to hockey or soccer practice or whatever the case is, instead of punishing people, let's empower people. And I think that's where the fundamental difference between the Conservatives and the Liberals is the Liberals want to take away freedom. They want to ensure that things are more expensive, to manipulate behavior. That's literally what the carbon tax does. They want to make life more expensive, make gas more expensive so people will burn less gas. And then ironically, they come around and will subsidize a whole bunch of other things and claim that that's their solution. But ultimately, they are making life more expensive because that's what their ideology is pushing for. Whereas Conservatives, we want to do the opposite. We want to empower Canadians. We want to ensure that we unleash the full potential, the creativity, the ability for people in this country to solve the problems that exist. I spent some time working for former Saskatchewan Premier Broadwell. And one of the examples that he used to use, especially when it comes to the environment, was he would highlight how the province of Saskatchewan, specifically in terms of their electrical generation, they had developed carbon capture, sequestration, and storage. And they were able to convert a coal-fired power generating station, in an area that didn't have hydro capacity, didn't have much in terms of other options. They were able to make that virtually emissions-free. And Brad Wall's case at the time that he tried to make to the Liberals was to say, look, just let us take this technology to the world. And if we could take this technology to the world, we would be able to reduce global emissions by 10, 15, or 20%. So not the 1.5% that Canada represents in terms of emissions, but actually a much larger and more significant. And I think that that's where Conservatives, we want to talk about technological solutions. We want to ensure that it's Canadians that are empowered to innovate and to figure out the solutions. And look, I spoke to a company that's starting operations in Alberta. They figured out how to take lithium out of what's called produced water. So it's like brine that is mixed with oil deep under the ground. They figured out a way to take lithium out so we could be producing batteries locally through locally sourced lithium, that in a process that actually kind of looks like an oil well, but it's getting lithium. There's so many incredible solutions that exist. So instead of punishing, let's empower. And that's, I think, the message that I certainly try to make on the Environment Committee. And I know that's going to be a big part of what our entire Conservative team, what we present to Canadians, is say, look, it's time to get Ottawa out of the way. It's time to remove the gatekeepers. Pierre says remove the gatekeepers a lot. He talks a lot about freedom. So let's remove the gatekeepers and make people free to choose what's best for them. And when you trust Canadians, when you trust people to make the best decisions for themselves and the best decisions for the environment, we trust the Canadians will make the right choice.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more there about it's not about taxation. It's not always about taking more money away from Canadians' pockets. It's about investing in technology that will be beneficial towards reducing emissions without making life more unaffordable for Canadians already in a cost of living crisis. So I know you've already talked multiple times about how you have a farm, right? You were a fifth generation farmer, right, to help your family farm. And the next question speaks on that. And as a farmer yourself, you know better than most MPs about the challenges that farmers are facing. What do you want to see a Poilievre government do to address these challenges?
Yeah, so the experts that know how to farm are farmers. And what is so frustrating with the direction of the current government is that they want to try and micromanage and it's not limited to farming, but certainly in my perspective and my experience, I see how they want to micromanage what a farmer does. Well, let's let farmers make decisions that are best for them. Instead of making life and fuel and fertilizer and everything more expensive for farmers, let's let farmers do what's best for them. And by virtue of being a farmer, having that multi-year outlook on what it takes to be successful, what it takes to steward the land, to ensure that there's good and strong soil health and all of those other factors. Let's let farmers who are the experts in their field, no pun intended, to actually do what's best. And when you do that, we could see that Canada can truly become the breadbasket for the world, especially at a time where, with the hostilities against Ukraine and everything else associated with that, we need more of what Canada has, making sure that we empower Canadians to do what's best for them and to do what's best for the environment. So I can tell you definitively that when the federal government says, hey, you need to reduce the amount of fertilizer that a farmer is allowed to use, that is bad policy. That is not only going to hurt farmers, it's going to hurt the world. And there's one issue increasingly, and especially this comes, you'll have heard quite a bit about carbon tax 2.0 recently. And one of the big frustrations about carbon tax 2.0 is that the Liberals are actually suggesting that we take more food at a time when there's already increasing rates of food insecurity around the world. They're actually suggesting that we take food out of the food supply chain and turn it into energy, and that they do so at great cost. So it'll cost Canadians more. And we're literally taking what could be food, out of the food supply chain when we have the ability to power vehicles and create fuel efficiently in other ways. So it's really frustrating that there seems to be this logical disconnect with what is being proposed by the Liberal Party. So whether that's the carbon tax punishing or their ag policy or a whole host of other things, let's let the experts who know what they're doing, know how to do their jobs. Let them actually do the work, and I think as a country we will see a phenomenal amount of success when we trust Canadians.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. I mean, farmers, I think in this field, it's a lot about experience, right? Knowing your way around things. It's not necessarily all about graphs, charts, data, and all that. It's about having that real experience, knowing how to operate it, knowing what comes along, what are the challenges, how do you maneuver around those challenges, and let them figure it out. 100%. Couldn't agree with you more there. And I want to move on to a bit more of a personal question. And basically, how does your Christian faith inform your political advocacy?
Yeah, great question. And it's interesting because we actually just finished a week in Ottawa where there was a number of events that are very close to my heart, and that's the National Prayer Breakfast, Leadership Dinner, and then a youth leadership summit that happens alongside that, where Christian leaders from across the country, young and old, are able to come together and to talk about the issues, to join together, not so much in a partisan way, but to truly talk about the challenges our nation faces. And as a Christian, my faith provides a foundation for so much of what I do, whether that's the moral issues that I take a stand on, whether that's ensuring that people are cared for, and beyond just the point where in politics one can be honest, can take a stand for something, and make sure that one cares for their constituents, cares for people who need to have their voices heard. So my faith informs a lot of that, and we're so blessed to live in a country where we have that freedom to be able to express that, whether that's on the floor of the House of Commons, or whether that's in church on Sunday, or for people of other faiths, whatever day they worship. The fact that we can have those freedoms, the fact that faith can be a part of our lives, and it's not about having faith-based institutions, but rather having the ability to see that faith can inform our public discourse and dialogue, and hopefully ensure that we are able to keep those strong values and morals that truly built not just our country, but so much of what we've seen success in the Western world about.
Yeah. So I want to move on to our final segment, and this is advice for the next generation, where we will be talking about youth involvement in politics and more. So what is one piece of advice you would like to give to high school students to get more politically active?
Yeah, great question. So look, my advice can be summed up in a really, really simple way. Show up. It sounds super simple, but when you start showing up, that's truly how you can make a difference. So whether it's to a local EDA meeting or constituency association meeting, show up. And even if there's a meeting that doesn't go your way, or maybe you're looked down upon because you're the youngest person in the room, keep showing up. Decisions are made by those who show up, and I cannot underline how truly important simply showing up is. The other thing that I think is really important, and especially for people who are looking at getting more involved in politics, make sure you honor and respect people, even if you disagree with them. And whether that's on social media or whatever the case is, make sure that you are consistently honoring and respecting everybody you come into contact with. So whether it's the prime minister or leader of the opposition, and look, this isn't always easy to live out when I have such vehement disagreements with our current prime minister, but they still are human, and they deserve that honor and respect in the midst of everything. So my encouragement for everybody is, first, show up. You got to show up. But the second thing is make sure that you honor and respect everybody, treat them with dignity, and as a result, it will serve you well, and it will especially serve people around you well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. to what you said about showing up, I showed up to one canvas in 2021, and look at where I am today. I'm involved in politics all across the spectrum, well, all across federal, provincial, municipal, and little did I know that showing up to that one canvas would have led to today. So I really want to thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate you being here with us, and we wish you well in the future.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity, and keep up the good work. This is important. You're talking about issues that matter to young people and folks across the country. So I know that you're specifically focused in Ontario, but I really value and appreciate the work that you guys do to talk about the issues and to get people involved. And like you said, you summed it up really well. You showed up, and look where you are now. For me, that was 15, 17 years ago when I was a teenager. I started showing up, and about 15 years after that point, I was elected to Parliament. So for you, Vasu, or any of your listeners, who knows what can happen if you're passionate, able to show up and treat people with dignity and respect. I really look forward to seeing where you and your listeners can truly be in the coming weeks, months, and years.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.